I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall on the palace there in Caesarea when, in the days and weeks that followed, we're in the year 59, and Paul is going to go to Rome at courtesy of the Roman governor. But he's not going to be sent alone. When trials like this, when men appeal to the Roman emperor throughout the Roman Empire, they would collect them, so to speak, those who had that right, the rare few that had. And all those of that region were held together and then put on a ship together to sail towards Rome. And that's what's going to happen. So a few weeks later, after the event that you just saw, where Paul reminds Porcius Festus of his job and pulls out the ultimate trump card, we will see him finally be put on a ship with 276 others that will be heading towards Rome. But first, there's one more pomp and circumstance occasion, because here's the problem. Porcius Festus was embarrassed that he tried to squeeze Paul back to Jerusalem. But he's also got an even bigger problem. He has to send with Paul to the Roman emperor the charges. And what are the charges? You can't send a man without charges. This is going to be even worse, and it's going to reflect on him in his new post if he sends a man to Rome without charges. So he takes occasion for a visit. He's new governor. All the VIPs come to see him, and here they come. Agrippa II and Bernice come down from Caesarea Philippi up north, one of the other palaces of Herod the Great, their grandfather. Herod the Great is the grandfather of Agrippa II. And Agrippa and Bernice, let's get this straight, are brother and sister. They have also been in a illegal relationship with each other for a lot of their life. Now, if you read about the biography of both of them, they're a dysfunctional from the word go. Bernice had 3 marriages by the age of 19. So you could say that's not her fault, arranged marriages, etc. But she had had an incestuous relationship with her brother, and he even, when she lived with them, married her off to another king. That didn't last very long. And then she came back to live with her brother. So here they are. So you can call them King Agrippa, if you wish. These are puppet kings under the Roman authorities, but they have real palaces and they have real money and power, in the sense they have guards and they have ability to take taxes from their own people. And they come to pay a homage, a visit. You know, it's kind of like when there's a new pope in Rome, when there's a new president in the White House, people come to the inauguration, the visit. This is like the inauguration of Porcius Festus, and it's been soured by this event with Paul. So here they come. Agrippa and Bernice come down from northern Palestine, from Caesarea by the sea. In fact, I've got a map right there. There is Caesarea Philippi. There it is up north. They come down to Caesarea by the sea. Okay? Come down to the palace that you saw. When some days had passed, Agrippa and the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. And as they stayed there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king. Why do you do that? This is going to be embarrassing. I've got this guy that appealed to the emperor. He's out of my hands now. And I need your help. Something to that effect. This is embarrassing. I need to know, what is it that, what can you explain to me why? So Agrippa said, well, you know, that might be good entertainment for the day. Let's find out. I would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow you will hear him. And so we have this we have this big pomp and circumstance, big dinner, lots of invited people, and Paul's going to be the entertainment of the day. So here it goes. On the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp. They entered the audience hall with the military tribunes, prominent men of the city. Then at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. And Festus, so Paul's in the middle of this gigantic, big, fancy dressed audience of elite people. And he's the prisoner, well, he's under house arrest. And Festus said to him, King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man about whom the whole Jewish people petition me, both in Jerusalem and here, shouting that he ought not to live any longer. And then there's, well, no, you'd never say that, verse 25. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death. You skipped that part in the first, when you tried to send him for trial to Jerusalem. I have brought him before you all, especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. Now that's the only piece of truth in that whole statement. He doesn't have anything to write to the emperor. So I got a problem. Can you help me? So Agrippa said to Paul, you have permission. Notice here again, Paul waits for permission to speak. Paul stretched out his hand, a rhetorical device, and he says, and this is most honest, I know you, Agrippa II. I consider myself fortunate that I get to lay my cause out before you, because I'm going to make my defense before you against all the accusation of the Jews, especially because you are familiar with all the customs and controversies of the Jews. Who's not familiar with customs and controversies of the Jews is Porcius Festus, from governor. He's new, and he made a mistake. Therefore, I beg you to listen to me patiently. I think he's earnest and honest here. Paul says, I'm okay. This is kind of crazy. You guys are all dressed in your Sunday clothes. You're all here. I'm like the entertainment day, but I don't even mind that. As long as I can actually freely speak, lay it out to tell you why I'm here, why I've been detained here for 2 years. My manner of life from my youth. There are people here in this audience that know when I was a teenager and I came to Jerusalem, spent from the beginning among my own nation. By the way, my own nation is Tarsus, okay? My own nation here is Cilicia, okay? And then Jerusalem. Here are the two parts of Paul's early life. Tarsus and Jerusalem is known by all the Jews. My life has been an open book, and there are people in this audience that know me when I was young. They have known for a long time, if they're willing to testify, that according to the strictest party of our religion, I have lived as a Pharisee. There are people in here that know of my life. When I studied with Gamaliel, became a full-fledged Pharisee, was elected to the Sanhedrin, there are people here that know me in those days. Now I stand here on trial because of my hope and the promise made by God to our fathers, to which our 12 tribes hope to attain as they earnestly worship night and day. And for this hope, I am accused by the Jews, O king. I'll tell you why I'm accused. Because of who I worship. And then he asks the question, why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? He brings back up that resurrection thing again. And it's just a reminder to us that Paul gets interrupted in his speeches every time he brings up that issue. But resurrection is the core. It's the permanent. It's what all of our faith, Christianity, rotates around. Because Christ resurrected, we're all going to be resurrected. The resurrection is everything. Anastasis is the Greek word here. That's the word. It's like the word that makes sense of everything. Resurrection. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things in opposing. There are those who know that I wasn't on the side of Jesus of Nazareth. And I opposed the way, and I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison, receiving authority from chief priests, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. Here you find out he became part of Sanhedrin. He did not only hold coats, that's before he had official voting rights. He was also God voting rights, official member of the Sanhedrin. And he put people to death with his vote. I punished them often in the synagogues. I tried to make them blaspheme. and in raging fury. He defines himself and his attitude as raging fury against them. I persecuted them. In the name of God, I tried to stop the way. And then, of course, he's got to tell the king what happened to him, the turnaround. In this connection, I journeyed to Damascus with authority and commission of the chief priests. At midday, O king, and here he goes. Third account of the conversion in the book of Acts. How many times did Paul tell it? Probably 500. We have 3. This is in front of a very daunting audience here. It's a mixture of Gentile and Jew, okay? And what's this? You have read this because we compared the 3 accounts of the conversion, what happened to him on the Damascus Road, but I'm going straight to the end of what gets him interrupted this time by the Roman governor Porcius Festus. This is what he says, that the Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. Messiah is the word for the anointed one, the one that the Jews are expecting to come, that the Messiah must suffer, and that by being first to rise from the dead, he will proclaim to both their people and this time, what gets them in trouble is the Gentile word, kind of like on the steps of Jerusalem. Porcius Festus is a Roman. He's a Gentile. And he's got these guests, and he's playing a political game. And he needs them to help him out with this. What am I going to tell the emperor as to why a whole Jewish nation seems to be adamant about killing this one man? He needs help. And he's afraid that what Paul is saying is going to offend Agrippa II and Bernice and all of their Jewish entourage. As he was saying these things, in his defense, Festus interrupts him, pops up from his throne and says, Paul, you're out of your mind. Your great learning is driving you out of your mind. And here's the thing. First he insults him, and then he compliments him. Make up your mind, Festus. Is he crazy? Or has he got great learning? Clearly, the way Paul speaks, his demeanor, his language. By the way, what language is he speaking in? Greek? He's a learned man, but he brought up, God told him to go to the Gentiles again. That same thing that got the mob all riled up on the steps. Now, Festus pops up and says, that's enough. That's it. Now, what's this? Paul has to address what the Roman governor says. He's in charge of that whole meeting. And Paul responds carefully, respectfully. I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus. I'm actually telling the truth. I'm speaking rightful words. And then he looks away from the Roman governor, in my opinion, looks towards Agrippa II, who's staring at him. And he says, the king, Agrippa, knows about these things. He knows about the story of Jesus in Jerusalem back 27 years ago. And so I can talk to him, and you don't have to worry about me offending him. For I am persuaded that none of these things have escaped his notice. You're new, but he's not. For this has not been done in a corner. Christianity was born in the public square, in front of everybody. Hundreds saw the resurrection of Jesus. The crucifixion of Jesus was right in the middle of downtown. Christianity is a public religion. It's meant to be played out in the public square. Paul says, none of the story that I preach, live by, happened in a dark alley somewhere. We're not a cult. We're open. We're an open faith. And this story is an open faith. Now, watch this. He doesn't even wait for a reply from Porcius Festus. He stares at Agrippa into his eyes and says, King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know you believe. He asks a question. He asks a question and gives the answer. He talks to the king, says, do you believe what I'm telling you? I already know you do. Now, there are times when I'm tempted to say, Paul has the ability as an apostle to look into the soul of people. I don't know that that's what's happening right here, but I think he knows the background of King Agrippa. He's a man that's living with a sister, sexually speaking, politically speaking, all kinds of dysfunction, immoral, etc. But he knows the story. And he says, I know you believe what the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah and Micah prophesied about the Messiah. I know you know them. You know the Old Testament prophets. Porcius Festus doesn't, but you do. And Agrippa must have leaned back. And this is what he says. Now watch out. Verse 28 can be read two ways in the Greek. The ESV translation you've got in front of you, probably most of your Bibles, pose it as a question. But let's get this straight. The Greek text does not have question marks in the wording of a question. Sometimes you can tell from the context, but there's no punctuation in the original Greek text. So let me read it two ways. Either Agrippa said this, in time, you think you can persuade me to be a Christian? Or option number two, you're this close to persuading me to be a Christian. It's either a question or a statement. And it's very different how they play out. My particular preference for here, Agrippa makes a statement, not a question. But I can't prove it. He says, you're this close from persuading me to be a follower of Christ. You know why I believe that? Because of the incredible words that Paul says, lovingly, respectfully, right after that. This is one of the most powerful moments of Paul's life. In a VIP audience, he's Mr. Entertainment, and the spotlight has been on all the people with the fancy dresses and the pomp and circumstance. He was the entertainment for the day. He's the prisoner. And when you get through with these words that he says in response to King Agrippa, the spotlight, the only spotlight left on is the one on him. He's the only one that knows what's going on. Of those hundreds of people in that audience that day, the only one that's blessed, the only one that's saved. Look, Paul said back to King Agrippa, short time or long time, I just wish to God that not only you, but everybody in this audience right here today that came to be entertained by me in my court case could become just as high, except for these chains. I don't wish any of you to be accused falsely, to be held for 2 years. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. But I do wish on everybody in this audience that you could have the kind of assurance and peace and faith that I've got. Period. Astounding. Can I suggest that when he said this, there's a silence that echoed in that room? All the chit chatter was gone. If you had been in charge of the theatrical production of this scene, all the spotlights are gone off the people with the fancy clothes, and the only spotlight left is on Paul, who says, I'm the luckiest man in here because I know who the Messiah is, and I'm saved. And I wish that all of you could be just like me, except for these chains. It's just astoundingly powerful. And it's if ever there was a time that I admire Paul, it's right now. Wow. What an occasion. Okay, now watch the aftermath. There's silence. They get up quietly. The king rose, the governor and Bernice and those who were sitting with them. When they had withdrawn, when they were private, they were in front of all the audience, they said to one another, these are the first words spoken after Paul's words. This man is not guilty of anything that deserves death or imprisonment. And then there's that phrase. And here's the question for you. Agrippa said to Festus, this man should be released. He's not guilty of anything, except he appealed to Caesar. And he did it publicly. There's nothing you can do. The whole legal thing has been set in motion. Agrippa says, you should let him go. but you can't. You made a mistake, and now he's going to go to Rome. And there you go. Very powerful. Comments or questions of yours? I love chapter 26. It's just, wow, to have the right words. I think I've asked you before, have you ever been around people with clout, VIPs? I think I mentioned to you, I've been in front of American president, shook hands with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Don't hold it against me. I have spoken to the president of Italy in Rome. They had to do with my duties as a director of a program overseas. I met Lady Di in Rome one time. She was shopping in the Via Veneto. And John Paul II, Pope of Rome, came out of side room of St. Peter's right with his Swiss guards, and I was with my students, and we had a conversation. To have the right words to say when the people that have clout, and they have people, and they have bodyguards, and they have entourages, and oh wow, I don't think I did as well as Paul in my brief occasions with powerful people. Try to make a difference. Say something that will stick, to these people that are political animals, or there you go. Well, there you are. Look at this map. It's the year 59. He should have been let go, but he can't. He's got to go to Rome. You see, once you pull that trump card out, nobody could stop it. So that's why maybe he waited and waited and waited. He hadn't pulled it out ever in his life before. And he waited 2 years in Caesarea by the Sea before he pulled it out. He didn't want to be a political pawn of those Roman governors anymore. But do you realize, after their long journey to Rome, who's going to be judging you? When Paul pulled that card out in 59, Claudius Aquinas Barbus, or Nero, was 19, and he is as vicious as they come. You expect righteousness and fairness. He doesn't value human life at all. So I don't know. That's another thing I'll ask Paul when I get there. Did you know what was going on in Rome when you appealed? I know you saw that you weren't going anywhere in Caesarea. You were stuck. You had to get out of there. But did you know what lie ahead of you for you? Or did your trust in God just simply say, no? Here's a word that I've used before with regard to Paul's life. God disposes, Paul proposes, God disposes. We put them in the right order. Paul always welcomes God through a vision or whatever to dispose of how things are going to happen. He proposes, makes plans, do missionary trips. And since God does not use visions and things like that anymore, but we're still left with the same thing, with our lives, our activities, our work, our families, etc. We make plans. We hopefully do them with God in mind and serving God. And God then disposes to make certain opportunities open for us and others not. We propose to do things in our life with our time and with our energies and our talents, and God disposes. So Paul has a little more guidance with visions, but he also has moments. Who told him to pull out that trump card? He did. He didn't have a vision. He pulled it out. He said, I'm tired of staying here. So do you see this red line? What he doesn't know is that's going to be his trip to Rome. Okay, I don't recommend that because you see where it swiggles right there in the middle? That's a 2-week storm in the middle of the Mediterranean on a ship that when it hits a sandbar, crashes, starts falling apart. By the way, did Paul know how to swim? Here's another question. Can anybody swim in the, well, I've been in a storm in the Mediterranean and the waves sometimes are 30 foot high. They come up the third level of a 9-story high cruise ship. Well, let me tell you, you'll find out 2 seconds flat if you suffer of seasickness or not. I wonder if Paul suffered seasickness, you know, things that were never told. This is going to be his journey. It's the last journey he makes according to the book of Acts. And he's going to go to Rome and he's going to get there. 59 he leaves Caesarea. Look at Rome on the other side. He's going to get there in the spring of the year 60. No, it should not take 6 months, but it's going to because of a gigantic shipwreck. That is what Acts chapter 27 and 28 are, and what are the most beautiful part, to be honest with you, the book of Acts. Luke is a doctor by profession. It narrates the story of early Christianity. The last 2 chapters of his book of Acts are absolutely a literary masterpiece. The way he tells the story, by the way, he was on the ship. And I suppose that Luke didn't like being in 30-foot waves either, and in a gigantic shipwreck. But that's the journey that we're going to see. And then the last days that we know of in Rome through the letters of 1st, 2nd Timothy, and Titus. But I think we're going to call it a night tonight. And I'm going to record the last PowerPoint for you on a Zoom that I'll do. I can't do it before Thursday. If I do it Thursday, you'll make it available to you by Friday. You'll have all weekend to catch it. And then I'll send you the test on Monday. And I'll give you a deadline of next Friday, week after from this Friday. Is that reasonable? Is that doable?
Sounds great.
And my apologies for extending it, but I need to give, especially if you've not done the last days of Paul and you've not done Acts chapter 27, 28, a beautiful account. I want to give it the time that it needs. And because I love going on that story again, going on that trip with him. I'm not sure I like the shipwreck part. I've never been in one, but I hope I'm not. He was in 3 shipwrecks before this one. So he's already been in shipwrecks. I would be saying no more ships. Problem is, how are you going to get from one side of the empire to the other? There are no planes. There are no helicopters. And the 1st century AD was one of the most mobile civilizations ever because of the ships that were crisscrossing the Mediterranean from one side to the other, thanks to the Roman Empire.